So and then the population mean is a parameter. Because it describes the population. So the other option we have is if we have a sample. So the sample mean is going to be an X with a bar over the top of it. We call that X bar. And that's going to be if we just have our sample and we're trying to find the average of our sample. And that's going to be a statistic. Actually, I think I might actually. All right, so those are two definitions. They've got, just summing it up, the difference between these, if we're talking about the population, everybody in the population, if you take their average, that's going to be a mu. Most of the time we don't know mu because our population is too big. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to take a smaller group, our sample, and we're going to find their average, and that's going to be X bar. And we're going to use this X bar to kind of approximate what we think mu might be. Because like I said, most of the time we don't know mu. It's too hard to find it. So we'll find X bar instead. It's easier to find, and then we'll just use that as an approximation for what we think mu might be. Okay, and then they go through and they write out the definition. So these right here, this one, the 2, and the capital N, those are just indices. This is saying the first value, the second value, the nth value. And capital N just stands for how many people are in your population. So basically you're dividing up all of your values, dividing by N. So same as you're used to seeing for a mean. And then same exact formula for a sample, but when they have a sample, they use a lowercase n instead of capital N. But same basic idea, just add everything up, divide by how many of them there are. So the formulas are pretty much just going to be the same. When we get to 3.2, the formulas are going to be a little bit different for population and sample, so we need to keep that in mind when we get to that section. Okay, so now we're actually computing the mean. Right, okay. So for this one, they've got a startup company that only has 7 employees, so all 7 of them are right there. Our population is everybody who works at the company, so our population only has 7 people in it. When we're doing this one, it's going to be the population mean. They say it right here. But since it's everybody, that's going to be the population. Usually we can't find that, but since there's only 7 people, it's not too hard. So in order to figure out what mu is, can I write on this? Oh, I can't go. We're just going to add up 23, 36, 23, 18, 5, 26, 43. We've got 7 of them all together. And if you put that into your calculator, just be sure you put parentheses around the numerator, otherwise you're going to get something that's completely weird and doesn't make any sense. So when I do that in my calculator, I get 24 point, I'm just going to round it to 9. Okay, so 24.9 minutes is what it's supposed to be. Just not working out for me. Okay. All right, and then if you want to double check their commute times up here, 24.9, about 25, that kind of fits in with what these are. There's a lot of them that are in the mid-20s. There's one that's in the 30s, some that are smaller, one that's in the 40s. But 25 minutes kind of makes sense with the other ones. If you wound up with something that was like 122, where it's clearly a lot bigger than all of the numbers, and that's going to be a red flag that you did something wrong. So when you go through and you find your mean, it should fit in with the other numbers up here. Oh, so the median is the one that falls right in the middle of the data set, but you have to make sure that it's in order first, otherwise it's kind of meaningless. So for the median, you want to find the number that's kind of in the middle, so half of them are going to be less than it, half of them are going to be greater than it. This book uses capital letter M to represent the median, and that's for a population or a statistic. Some people also use MED, and that's going to come into play when we use our calculator later on. So MED can also represent the median, or capital N. They both mean the same thing. Okay. So for, sorry, I have to say because mine aren't blank. That's the median. There's a blank in your notes. It's folded right there. That's median. Write that one in. Okay, so the steps to figure out what your median is, if you're doing it by hand, if you're not doing it by hand, you don't have to do these steps. The calculator will do it for you, and we'll get to that after these next couple examples. Yeah. So first we want to make sure it's in ascending order. So smallest to largest. And then figure out how many observations there are. And then we're going to find the number that's right smack dab in the middle. If you have, n is odd, so if you have something like 7 or 9 or 23 or something like that, finding the number in the middle isn't going to be that bad because there's just one number that's right in the middle of everything. The problem is if you have an even number in your data set, you don't really have one number that's right in the middle. You're going to have two numbers. So what you're going to have to do in that case is you're going to have to take the two numbers in the middle and average them together. So you're going to take the mean of those two numbers in the middle. So we'll do an example of both of those. We'll start with the odd one because it's a little bit easier. Oh, so I don't think I included in your notes, but just graphically, this top one has 7 of them. So this number, you can't really tell, but this one here, this star is green. And so there's 3 numbers that are greater than it, 3 numbers that are less than it, so that number right there is in the middle. Here, if it's even, if you cut it off right here, there's 4 greater than it, 4 less than it. So you want right here in between these two numbers. And so what we're going to do is take these two numbers in green and just average them together to get one number as the median. Okay, so we have this same example here. You don't want to just find the number in the middle because it's not in ascending order yet. So first thing we want to do is write it in ascending order. Let's see if I can do this without it. 5, 18, 2 23s, and 26, 36, 43. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them listed. Okay. So now that it's in increasing order, we can find the number in the middle, which looks like this one. That's 23. That's our median. M. So 23 is our median right here. So there's our number in the middle. We've got 3 numbers greater than it, 3 numbers smaller than it, and that's our median. All right, so that's fairly straightforward. The one that they do next, oops. Oh, didn't realize I did that. Okay, so M equals 23. Okay, so now they've got some new guy that they hired. And he lives far away, so his commute time is 70 minutes. So now to do the median for this, again, we need to put it in order. And it's going to be the same. So 5, 18, 23, 20, 23, 26, 36, 43, 70. Come on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now there's 8 of them, so if you want right smack dab in the middle, it's going to be in between these two numbers here. Right, so if you look at where that line is, you've got 4 numbers that are greater than that and 4 numbers that are less than that. So that one's right there in the middle. That's not technically a number, so what we're going to do is we're just going to take these two numbers here, 23 and 26, and find the average of them. 23 plus 26 divided by 2. Again, if you're doing this in your calculator, either put parentheses around your numerator or do it in 2 steps. I just do 23 plus 26, enter, and then I divide it by 2 to get 24.5. And again, this number should be right smack dab in the middle of 23 and 26. And it should make sense with your list of numbers up here, which ours does. So again, if you get something that's really, really big or really, really small compared to all of your other numbers, go back and double check your work. So that's how you'll do the median for this one. These types of ones, if you're doing it by hand. If you have a small number of, or I guess a smaller sample, or a small population, I guess in this case, doing it by hand doesn't take too long, but if you have a bigger sample, say you've got like 30 or something like that, you kind of don't want to do it by hand. So we can go ahead and do this on the calculator instead. I think that's our next step. Yeah. So here's how we're going to do it on our calculator. We're going to use the 1-bar stats program. And that's the one we're going to use most often. Well, that's the one we're going to use in chapter 3. Yeah, it might come up again later, but mostly we're just going to stick to it in chapter 3. So when we run the 1-bar stats, we get back